Hey everybody, it's Joseph Conyers, aka Weatherclap, and welcome to Play Me an Excerpt, a platform where musicians like you can play an excerpt for a professional like me. I created this show to help demystify the audition process, hopefully making your next audition a success. Orchestra auditions, they just don't happen every day, but now playing for an expert is only a hashtag away. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Play Me an Excerpt. We have two fine players. We have Daniel, a double bassist from Jalapa, Mexico, and then we have Javier, a violinist from Cuenca, Ecuador. And I might be a little biased. Why don't we start with the double bassist? Daniel, play me an excerpt. Daniel, that was excellent. Really beautiful playing. Great poise, great rhythm. If I were behind the screen, you definitely have my attention. So bravo to you. So a few things to think about. When I think about this excerpt, this is kind of a notorious excerpt in the bass world because we have to be kind of light and agile, but at the same time, it's very, very technical. I do like to think of the flute. A flute also a very light and agile instrument. I like to think about the flute because, one, for that description, but the other reason is because the flute part in this piece really does tell us how to play the bass part. This is one of those instances, like many actually, one of many instances when we should really know what's going on in the whole of the score that will inform how we should play the bass part. Not to say that anything you did was bad or couldn't work, but I think some of these ideas might make it a little better so that when you're playing it behind the screen, the people who hear you and listen to you play are like, they definitely know how this piece goes. So, of course, most people know this tune, the very famous dun da dum ba da. If you didn't, because you only heard the bass part, that's what this is. This is a very, very famous tune. It might even be a ringtone on your cell phone. Dun da dum ba dum ba dum ba da dun dun da dum. This is the last movement of the second orchestral suite by Bach. Yeah, so let's look at the score. So we have the staccato indication, which sometimes we have to be really careful for as bass players. But that's basically it. But we see a 2-4. So does that mean if I'm looking at this, it should be da da beep ba beep ba, yeah, da da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da dee da dee da dun da dun da dun da. Is that the way? I mean, that's the way it looks. I see a 2-4. I see two pickup eighth notes being on the second beat. So 1, 2, 1. That's exactly what's in the score. But if you know how the flute part fits into this, it actually starts on that downbeat or on that second beat, which then makes it like a downbeat. So instead of it just being this da da dee, it's dun 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 dun. Is that the way it goes? I think it goes dum ba dum ba dum ba da. So in that way, it's almost like you move the bar line over and have it start on the downbeat. So if you think about it in the bass part, instead of bum ba 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 beep, it's da ba beep ba beep ba beep ba 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 beep ba beep ba da 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 ba beep ba beep ba dee da 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 da. And I think, Daniel, this will be really, really helpful in how you phrase the rest of this, because that's probably one of my biggest. If I was going to say anything that could make this better, your very fine performance better, is to hear more phrasing and thinking about how that flute part goes. So let's get even more specific. I would say, like, even out the gate, I'll do it slower. You could come away from the opening. Bum bum beep bop beep bop beep bop 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 beep bop beep bop ba da ga bum. So bum ticka dum ticka da ticka da ticka ticka da da ticka dee dum bum ticka dum ticka da. And flute players, I may not be singing all the exact right notes. I'm sorry about that, but this is for the bass player. we'll do the play me an excerpt for the flute edition for this excerpt later. So coming away, bum 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 beam bum, and bouncing. I do like this idea that you bounce on all the big beats. Bum 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 beam bum beam bum 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 beam bum beam bum. So those 4/16 notes are actually leading to the next down bar. Dee da dee da dum, dum bum dee da dee dum bum baga dum baga ding baga dum baga da da. So that's the phrasing and meaning. I'm hoping that is clear because it makes a big difference when listening to this. Okay, next we're going to talk about some dynamics. Now, there are not a lot of dynamics in the part, and there's some edited parts that actually have more dynamics in the part. That said, again, what would the flute player do? How would the flute player might phrase this? So, for example, da da ga dum ba ga dum ba ga da. That's the opening statement, and I think some might even do a little like a consequent statement after that. Da ga da ga da 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 ga da ba. Da digga da digga da digga da. So, but digga da digga da digga da digga da digga dee dum bum digga da digga da digga da digga da dee. So because of that, then we can phrase ba 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 beep ba beep ba 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 beep ba beep ba digga digga dum bum 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 beep ba beep. So it's just again following that line. I think it'll really help. Again, just bring life to an already great performance. Just make sure no notes stick out. There are two instances that I want to bring to your attention. This is like in the fourth full bar of the piece. You have, I actually have your score and you have an accent, da-ga-da-ga-da. I love the clarity of the start of that beat on those 4/16 notes, but again, I think they lead to the next two, so I wouldn't whack it. Again, with phrasing, you like, we're going to phrase like the Appalachians versus the Rockies. I did this in my last video where we talked about the Appalachians are smooth, older mountains on the east part of the United States, and the Rockies are a much younger mountain chain with peaks like this. If we're doing any kind of phrasing, we don't want to hit the note where we're going. And now that we know that the phrasing might be off by 1/2 bar, that second beat shouldn't actually be accented. If anything, it could be clear, but should lead to the next beat. So I'll do that slowly from the beginning so that's clear. Bum 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 beam bum beam bum 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 beam bum beam bum baga dega bum bum beam bum versus daga diga da. I hope that makes sense because adding that big accent all of a sudden, one, it jolts out to me, so it sounds like if you were even phrasing on that downbeat. But again, I don't think it's a real downbeat. I think the downbeat is actually over by 1/2 bar. The other one is when you're playing your E's at the end. This is before the end of the excerpt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 bars for the end of the excerpt. Bum 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 beep bop beep bop beep bop bop bop. What we don't want to do is whack that low E. I think the low E is almost like an afterthought. I don't think it's da da dee ba dee da dee ba dee da dee ba. I think it's dum bum beam bum beam bum beam bum beam bum beam bum bum. I think it's always at the end of a phrase versus having it be kind of accented anyway. That's so we really want to watch out for that for sure. Other points when we're talking about evenness of stroke. We have these in this piece. They're what I call them run ponies because I think that's a Suzuki thing. Run pony, run pony, run pony, run. And as the pony is running, you want to make sure it doesn't run away. So there are lots of run ponies in here, and your run ponies are pretty good. But at the end of the piece, starting in bar 28. You start the ponies start to run away. dum ticka-ding ticka-ding ticka-dum ticka-ding ticka-dum 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 ticka-dum, like giddy up. We just want to make sure we're really in great control over that. Good. I think the last thing I will mention is some of the quality of the notes and knowing how you're going to end the phrase. You play the excerpt so well, but then you get to like the bar 13, 14, 15, bar 16, that F sharp. Da da dee pa pa da. It just seems like an afterthought. Dee ta ta. First of all, it's a quarter note, so you might want to give it a little more body and make sure it just has a nice tail at the end. We don't want to dee da da and then make it sound like it's like a half thought. And then the end of the piece. How do you want to end this excerpt? So do you want to end with a dum ba da dee? Oh, sorry, I'm singing the flute part. Dum ticka dum ticka dum ba ga dee pum pum. You can do it like that, or you can do dum bum pum, because it is the end of the whole suite. Either way, whatever you do, it should be convincing. I always didn't. It didn't seem 1,000% sure. Like this is the end, and I'm going to end it like this. It just seemed like it occurred. We want to make sure that sounds like this is exactly what Daniel wants it to be. So let's do a little bit of listening and see how some of this stuff works. All right, here we go. Let's make sure we get you from the top. Here we go. So that was a great part where right away, da ba 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 beep ba beep ba 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 beep ba beep ba. Changing that color a little bit, starting on that D natural, I think might be. It's just an idea to make that a little more interesting. And then don't whack that that 16 note. Again, I love the clarity, but to go dum, I think it's just dum. So it actually goes to the next bar. We can listen to that again. Good. So you heard me talk about the run ponies. Even those you want to get a little fast. What happens is what's happening, Dan, is you're squeezing the two 16th notes too close together. This is very common bass players. You can practice this literally just by going. I know it's difficult, but don't take this personally. Although I'm going to say I'm going to direct it personally. That's a personal problem. Don't make it our problem. I know it sounds terrible. I had a conductor who used to say that all the time, but it's true. We have to figure out as musicians how we make the technical things sound the way the composer intended, so the audience hears the music in the way that the composer wanted. So we can't let any technical things get in the way of our artistic product. So in that way, we just want to be mindful that those two 16 notes, because it's hard, I know. So we're just, and I love how you're doing your fingering. We just have to make sure that the right hand stays even. For me, it's just really easy to think of the big beats, so I don't rush in between. So I just think dum, bum, bum, bum. And again, with good phrasing, it also makes it easier because the listener knows exactly where the music's going. If you could go if anything, that might sound slow and it's less, how can I say, clear of where the music is going. But we just don't want to rush because we want to show direction, but we don't want to rush. I hope that makes sense. Another good tip I have for that is I generally keep the 16 notes on the string and then release on the eighths. So bum and then dee da dee da dee da. If you think about the two 16 notes being legato and then just releasing the eighth, I think that will help too. I know a lot of bass players try to keep it really clean by trying to bounce or do spiccato on those two 16 notes. That makes me nervous. That makes me very nervous because to control those two 16 notes is much harder. Not to say it's impossible, but to me it's much harder, particularly if you want to keep them even. So again, 16 notes on the string. This is just a good rule for Baroque music anyway. 16 notes on the string, 8th notes off, or with release. Bum, pa-da-tum, 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 pa-da-tum. And you can practice that, and I know you'll nail that wonderfully. Good, let's keep going. Good. So that little sequence, da 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 dee da dee da dee. I think there could be more direction, and then da ba 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 bee bum bum ba na dee da. It kind of, you just cut it short. We don't want to cut that note short. We want to make sure it still has a nice body and ring to it. Good. Don't rush those 16ths. Go. Don't rush the. Don't let them run, pony, run, pony, run. Watch this little ease. Good, and yeah. So what you did when you played that ending is you would instead of somehow allowing the sound to continue, it just sounded like it just went up. So again, that's what I mean by making that definitive end. So those are my comments, Daniel. It sounds really great. You're doing really great work. I just had some little things that I hope will make your next audition that much more enjoyable. Yeah, no break there. Make sure you sing all the way through that. Accents. That's a forte. Could be a big difference. Not crescendo. Don't rush. And I hope that starts to paint a picture of some of the things I was talking about. Making sure we can have the rhythmic, how can I say, the rhythmic structure so that we can build everything else off of it. If you want to play me an excerpt, the details are in the description below. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. See you next time.